Good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in today. I pray God is blessing you with a great Monday. This is lesson number 36 of 5 Minutes with Luke. We are now in Luke chapter 14, and if you've been following with us and studying, we have gone down through the first 11 verses. Jesus has found himself invited to a feast by a ruler of the Pharisees, and the Pharisees, as is their habit, we don't know why they invited Jesus, but we do know one of their motives, that they had a man who had dropsy, put him before him. Jesus healed him and then put them to shame. They couldn't answer him. Jesus went on as he observed their greedy desire for prominence and recognition in the best places. And then he taught a parable showing humility is the route to go. And now Jesus finds himself in a position. He turns and looks at the one beginning in verse 14 who actually invited him. He's not through. Listen to what he says. He also said to the man who had invited him, when you give a dinner or a banquet, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or rich neighbors, lest they also invite you in return and you be repaid. But when you give a feast, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection. What is Jesus talking about here? Is he saying that I should not have a dinner, have a banquet, or do good for someone who is my neighbor, someone who is my brother, or a relative? Certainly not. But what is he talking about here? Look closely and you'll see he's talking about motive. Why do you do those things? Don't do those things to get those back. Imagine if in my neighborhood there was an individual who he had quite a bit of money. He had a large boat. In fact, he had a really nice zero turn lawnmower and a tractor. And I'm in need of a tractor right now, actually. So I do some good for him. I make friends with him. I invite him over for supper. I'm hoping that I'll grease the wheels, if you will, so I can borrow that tractor or go fishing in that boat. But there are some other folks who've moved in down the road, and well, they don't have a whole lot. Their property's in shambles, and I'm just not very motivated to do good for them, because the truth is, they're not likely to be able to do anything for me. Folks, that's the way the world thinks. Jesus pointedly said to this man, who very likely would never have been interested in inviting someone who was blind, someone who was lame, someone who was crippled, someone who was poor. Why? Because those people did not fit into the list of individuals acceptable to him, and they certainly couldn't do anything for him. But Jesus made it clear, you'll be rewarded at the resurrection of the just. There are three takeaways from this passage today, Luke 14, 12 through 14, that I hope you'll consider. Number one, don't do good for recognition or reward. Number two, do good to genuinely help another person. And number three, the good we do follows us to heaven. In Revelation chapter 14 and verse 13, and I heard a voice from heaven saying, write this, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Blessed indeed, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, for their deeds do follow them. When I listen to what Jesus said here, I come to understand the good that I do for another person should never be to be rewarded for it, to get it in return, to be recognized for it, but instead should be because of the goodness God has given me, done for me, and I do to help another person, because that person needs it. In fact, that person will never be able to give it back. And I do it for that reason. And God will reward me at the resurrection of the just. Are we those kind of people, the people who do good for the sake of doing good? God is watching us. Thank you so very much for listening today. I hope you'll study Luke again with me tomorrow. Have a blessed Monday.